2 years ago, I packed my car, old Chevette, 84. Drove it till the engine smoked, hitched a ride through San Antone. Got a job, tending bar, let a senorita break my heart. I wanna sink my feet into some Illinois clay, walk along the cornfield in the cool of the day, get a dog and chase.
We're down at Houston, Texas. We're at the Commodity Classic. We're talking with the guys from CommonGround, Chris Bauman and Brad Belzer. How you guys doing?
Good.
Great.
Fantastic. Chris, you're from Morton.
Yep.
I don't even know where to start because, well, tell me how you even got interested in what you're doing now.
So it's just kind of out of necessity. Background, a little bit about me. Entrepreneur, bought and sold some businesses, but my passion's the outdoors. And really wanted to farm, basically a hobby farm. Get wife and kids, get out, get away from the iPads, hunt, fish, everything like that. So in 2013, I was fortunate enough to purchase my first farm, and that's what it was for. It was for hunting, fishing, just getting out of the city.
How big?
It was 163 acres.
Wow.
Yes.
You started good.
Well, it depends. Everything's relative, so.
You always want bigger, don't you?
You always want bigger. So, but upon closing, I went out to the farm for the first time, and then I kind of walked around and I realized, okay, I've got some tillable acres. And all of a sudden I was like, well, I really don't know anything about farming. And wound up talking to the neighbor, and he said, hey, your current farmer that's been farming it, he doesn't really know what he's doing. The equipment's outdated. Why don't you go talk to the neighbor next door? And so I put a card in his mailbox and wound up
Did he
meeting
hate
with
that guy or something? He
I
totally
believe
sold
he
him
hated
under.
it. Oh, yes. I believe he did not like the current farmer. So I wound up talking to the guy next door, and he said, yeah, I farm all the ground around you. I'd love to start farming your ground. I said, okay, how's it work? He said, well, we're going to do a 50-50, split all the inputs, split all the costs, and then we split the profit.
Sharecropping.
Sharecropping.
Yeah.
And me being none the wiser, my first farm, I trusted him and said, hey, let's go to work. And it was fine. First few years, it was me getting seed bills, fertilizer bills, him saying, hey, when do you want to sell your grain? I'm like, I don't know when to sell my grain. I don't know anything about selling grain. And I was just kind of, inundated with stuff I didn't know.
Yeah.
And then I started pushing a pencil to it, being an entrepreneur, and I wasn't really overly pleased with the return. And so I went to him and I said, hey, I just want to do a cash rent agreement. I want a flat rate per acre. I want to know my return. I don't need to be a 50-50 partner in a farming operation. I'm not a farmer.
How'd that go over?
Well, about as expected. So he shot me a rate of what he would pay, and me being an entrepreneur, real estate background, I found it very, very odd and upside down, if you will, that here I have this investment, I'm expecting an ROI on it. I own rental property, and when I put a house up for rent, I tell prospective tenants what the rental rate is. But here my tenant is telling me what it's worth. So I said, well, just hold on, let me do some research. And that led me on a journey of kind of spending my spare time digging up fragmented resources, figuring out my soil type, GPSing my farm, figuring out what is my ground truly worth. And then it dawned on me, farming is a business. Every farm is a different size. They have different overhead structures. They have different risk tolerances. And I knew that there was an opportunity in this marketplace. And I went back to my farmer and I said, hey, I did all this research. Here's all my evidence. I think this is a fair price. And he said, yeah, you did your research, looked at all my stuff. And then he said, my offer's not changing. That's when I reached out to Brad and said, hey, I think I need a new farmer. The current one I got doesn't want to pay what I think it's worth. How do I go about doing that? You're a land broker in the area. I need your help.
And I told him I've got a couple guys out there that we can start discussions with. And he called a couple hours later and he goes, Brad, I think we could do something with this. This is a huge problem. Do you see this in your day-to-day land sales business? And realistically, I had almost become numb to it that there is a disparity at times when a landowner calls and says, hey, Brad, I'd like you to market and sell my property. If it's, say a 100-acre tract, it's got 70 tillable acres, 30 timber, it's kind of a mixed recreational tillable tract. And when I go to sell that, I have seen in instances where, say, they're getting $150 an acre on that 70 acres of tillable ground. Well, the ROI is really hard to justify the purchase price of what that property should
Always
go
is,
for.
yeah.
Always. But so working, I've seen it so many times that talk to the landowner and say, hey, like, are you sure we can't do better than $150 an acre on this farm? It's going to help you substantially on the sale. And well, same exact situation Chris was in. Well, that's what the farmer's always paid. Me as the landowner, I'm really none the wiser. I'm just taking what the farmer tells me he's willing and able to pay, and that's what I end up with. And so, I guess to Chris's insight, it happens all the time to people, and so being able to increase the ROI on these farms obviously made my life as a land broker much easier to get the most possible out of these farm transactions when they go to sell. That now we're pushing a 3% return on this 70 acres of tillable on the 100-acre tract instead of 100 the 150 rate at 1.5% ROI.
We really looked at the entire marketplace and how antiquated it was, and that's when we decided to come up with CommonGround, helping absentee landowners find quality tenant farmers.
Generally, what I've seen, let's say someone comes and buys ground, or the kids that have no idea what the farm is doing. They start out with that 50-50 because they know that's fair, right? If the farmer's going to make money, we're going to make money. If he doesn't, we're not.
Correct.
But it seems like they always get tired of paying all the checks, right?
Well, not only that, when you get a seed bill or a fertilizer bill as a landowner with no experience, I don't know how much seed's going on my farm. Is some of that bleeding onto the farm next door? Same with chemicals. Like you're in this spot as a landowner in a 50-50. You're a 50-50 business partner in a business you have no knowledge of. And it's not a good spot to be in. I think that's why cash rental is such an attractive option for landowners. Like, we're impacting everyday lives, and when our average landowner that puts their ground up experiences a 39.5% increase in ROI, that is with an average of 12 farmers bidding and around 63, 64 bids per property. So we're finding price equilibrium in a very untransparent marketplace. And what's awesome for us is we're changing people's lives. A lot of these people are on fixed incomes, and you've got that little old lady that she's living off Social Security and farm income. And when her rental rate on her 200 acres goes from $200 to $400, and it changes her life. Got to be a fair deal. The farmer has to make money, and the landowner has to be happy with their return. And if one side of the equation gets lopsided, our marketplace doesn't exist. And that's why we're constantly striving to drive value for both landowners and farmers.
We want the landowner to get the full benefit of however much the rent goes for. And we just feel that that's the fair way to go about this.
All right, guys, what you have built is it's amazing. And to hear the story that you guys really weren't involved in agriculture and where you're at now is, I don't know, it says a lot about you, and congratulations. If people want to find out all about CommonGround, where do they go?
They're going to go to commonground.io.
.io.
.io.
Why don't you get one of those .coms?
We tried the .com. I think the guy who owned CommonGround.com wanted $200 and some thousand or something for that domain.
We can take him out. Do you know where he lives? Chris and Brad, thank you guys very much. Really appreciate getting to know you, and really appreciate the interview here today.
Rob, thank you so
Likewise.
much.